Hey, I'm Jess, and I'm the freak behind the Cardigan Freak Knitting Podcast, a typical format knitting video podcast where I talk about everything I've been making lately. Mainly knitting, mainly cardigans, but you'll see a whole variety of things here. Today is a few weeks since my last podcast, and I'm excited to be coming back to because I have a few finished objects, one of which is a gift that I'm giving away tomorrow. So I wanted to take the chance to show it to you before I give it away. And then the others are just a couple things I'm excited about. Today's my fourth video, so thanks so much if you're a returning viewer, but also thanks if this is your first time watching. Excited to have you here. Let me know what you're working on in the comments below if you want, but also no worries if not, I should say. I feel like when I watch knitting podcasts, I'm more of a lurker than a commenter, although I think it is good to comment, so I'm trying to do that more. A little bit about me. I have been knitting for 3.5 years. I live in New York City, and aside from knitting, I really enjoy baking, so I'll talk a little bit about some recipes I've been loving at the end. And I also like walking, gardening, books, yeah, all that stuff. With that being said, the format of this podcast, as I said earlier, is a traditional kind of knitting video podcast where first I'll talk about my finished objects, then I'll get into my recent progress, future plans, and at the end I'll talk about what I've been baking and some podcaster shoutouts, which is fun. Since last episode as well, one exciting thing that I've gotten up to is going to the Brooklyn yarn crawl with my friend Georgia, so shout out Georgia. That was really fun, and I did wear one of my finished objects to that event, so yeah, well, I'll talk about that later, but yeah, I guess I'll get into it. Okay, so I'm wearing my most recent finished object, which I only just sewed the buttons onto, which is exciting. I can see the lighting is kind of funny. But this is a Traveler's Cardigan by Ozetta that I modified to kind of be like a scrappy cardigan for me. The reason I made this is because I had a bunch of skeins of blown yarn laying around, like Siniscarn Coos, Woolmaging Feeling Good, I think it's called, and one leftover skein of Isir Soft from my Levitate wrap, which I made 2 years ago. And I didn't know what to do with them, but I knew I wanted to incorporate them all in a project together. So when I thought about this color order of the stripes, I was like, okay, this is a good project for me, because I really like the idea of how it's like white, gray, purple, white, gray, blue. Obviously the sleeve is a little different, but I did that for pretty much the whole body. And I held all of those yarns with a variety of mohairs that I have. Like the purple I held with like a light purple, white, and dark purple that you can see somewhere. And then like the gray I held with a few like gray mohairs that I had. The white I held with this like green, another white, and yeah, actually just those two. And then the blue I just held with a very similar blue mohair that I had. So it was a really nice way to use all those different yarns that I had lying around. Like I think I've had those yarns all together for a year almost. Of course, since then I've added like different mohair scraps that I didn't have a year ago, but pretty much the yarns were kind of like sitting around for a year. So that's exciting. For the specs of this cardigan, I made it in a size 2XL because for my bust circumference I would typically make like a size XL, but I saw this cardigan doesn't have as much ease as like a typical like My Favorite Things knitwear or petite knit pattern, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna make like a bigger size. So I did that. However, my gauge was off somehow. Yeah, I didn't gauge swatch for this pattern specifically. I gauge swatched on the same needle size but with a different yarn, but I think this yarn really grew with a blocking. Like for example, you can see these sleeves are like past my hands, and the drop of the drop shoulder is at my elbows, but before blocking, these sleeves like weren't even at my wrists, I think. So it really grew a lot. However, the arms, the sleeves, they were on gauge at the 15 stitch gauge that this pattern is knit on. So a swing and a miss kind of, but also I guess I got it right for the arms. And honestly, I feel like the fabric of the arms looks way nicer because I knit them in the round instead of knitting them flat for the body. But it's okay. I'm not mad about it. This project was kind of like just for fun. And yeah, I feel like I couldn't have been happier with it for like kind of how it came together. I guess this pattern is, yeah, as I was saying, a typical kind of like drop shoulder style pattern. It's constructed starting from the back where you do a long tail cast on and then break the yarn, slip some stitches, and then do some short rows. And then you knit flat for a little, pick up for the front, do increases for the neck, and then knit some more flat, and then join for one piece for the body. I did make, like a good amount of modifications to this. So the first one about the neck. So I mentioned this in my last video, so I'm not sure if I'm being redundant, but pretty much for the neck, you, in the pattern, it says to do one increase for every 4 rows. So that's kind of like a typical increase rate for a V-neck, but then you pick up the neckband as you would for a round neck. So it's kind of like a longer drop. I didn't know why that was done, and I've never done that before for a round neck, and I really like how round neck cardigans and shirts look where you increase like 1 in every 2 rows. So I did that. So how I did that was I just took the total amount of neck rows and I divided it in half, and then the first half of the total like neck rows I just continued to knit like back and forth without increases, and then the second half is when I did my increase of 1 in every 2 rows. And I'm happy with how that turned out. I think before I put buttons on this, I thought the neck was very low, and I do think next time I knit this pattern, I would make the flat section or like the non-increase section of the neckband or neck shaping a few less rows to kind of like raise the neck a little bit. But I think like now that I have buttons on, I don't have any issues with how the neck looks. Yeah, I think it's good. I guess for the body, I didn't make any changes. And then all of the bottom ribbing and then the button band I knit in the Issir Soft that I had left over from my Levitate wrap, and I held it with like a dark gray mohair. So those were all consistent, but, oh, and the neckband. But after I knit all of those, like I run out of the yarn. So I didn't use that yarn for the arm ribbing. The neck ribbing, the body ribbing, I just did for 8 rows. So 7 rows. So I knit 1 row across when I changed to my new color, and then I did 7 rows of ribbing so I wouldn't have a jog with my first row of ribbing. And I did that because I wanted it to be a width of 2 stripes. I didn't mention, but I did 4 row stripes, so yeah, I thought that would be good. I'm not sure if it exactly looks like the width of 2 stripes, but it's okay. And then for the neckline, since when I was knitting this, I thought that the neck was kind of low. I knit a chunkier neckband by using the My Favorite Things Cardigan number 9 neck of the double knit rows and then the neck. So I'm happy with how that turned out. I don't really think you can, like, since, I don't know, I feel like the neck kind of all looks like one piece. I don't know if you can really pick out that there's like the double knit section going on here. The only other thing I did was for the sleeves. So in this pattern, Ozetta calls for, I think the sleeves knit in 1, like without decreases, and then you do a lot of decreases before the cuff. I didn't want that. I didn't really want like a balloon sleeve look. So what I did was I just did 1 decrease. I don't know if I said increases earlier, 1 decrease every 12 rows. So for me, it was easy because it ended up being every one of my colorful stripes. Yeah, so I think that only ended up being like about 5 stripes. 5 decreases for 5 colorful stripes. The sleeves are pretty oversized, but I must have not knit as many rows for the yoke as Ozetta has you do because I wasn't able to pick up the full amount of stitches for the size 2XL. But yeah, I'm not mad about that. Like I'm happy with how the sleeves turned out. I think they look good relative to the like oversizedness of the cardigan. And yeah, I think they're comfortable, so all good. And then, yeah, for the button band, I guess, yeah, I forgot that's another modification. So Ozetta calls for the button band to be knit while the body is being knit for the cardigan. And I didn't want to do that because I kind of envisioned the button band being all one color. And also I cut the yarn, I can kind of show you here, after every single stripe. So I'm not sure how I'd be able to kind of make the button band look good if I was changing and cutting my yarn every 4 rows. So I just did a 1x1 rib button band with yarn over buttonholes, and I only did 5 buttonholes for this just because like when I was calculating how many rows to put in between each button, I was only able to get like a good or an even amount with 5 buttons versus 6 buttons. But I think yeah, it looks good for this length of cardigan. It's definitely a little more cropped, but that's okay. And yeah, I just use these like toggle wood buttons that I have. I got a big pack online, and I've been using them for different projects. You'll see some more of these later. And then for yarn consumption, I didn't weigh out each of my skeins of yarn yet because I just recently finished this, and yeah, I didn't get a chance to. However, I weighed my whole cardigan because I think it would be impossible for me to know like how much of each of the different mohairs I used because some of them were like scraps and whatnot. So what I'm gonna do is weigh out like each of my blown yarns and see how much yarn I used, and then from there I'll know like how much mohair I used. But I know I used like at least probably like 1.5 of each of my skeins of Isir Kus, which is this like the white and gray stripes. And then I thought I was using a lot more of the purple than the blue because like the purple, I guess the only way the purple is different is it's the color that the body ends on. So, but I did, yeah, I probably had like 5 to 10 grams left of the purple, and same with the blue. And I overcompensated because I thought I was going to run out of purple. I decided to do 3 blue stripes in a row here instead of this would be a purple stripe as it was on this side. But I honestly I really like how the stripes look where it's like white, gray, blue, green. I think like this section is one of my favorites. But yeah, so yarn consumption, unsure exactly, but I know this garment weighed 400 grams, which is pretty light, I would say. So, but yeah, I like the fabric a lot. And then for dates, I forgot to say. So I cast this cardigan kind of on a whim, and then I was working on it, and then I got really annoyed with the second sleeve because I only have 6.5mm needles in one of my needle sets, or I did at the time, since then I've acquired a new 6.5mm tips for my preferred needles, which are CNIT needles. But I was really not enjoying my my 6.5mm sleeve cord, so I kind of just put it on hold because I wasn't into it. But then I picked it up because I really wanted to finish this. I was motivated by that. But about the dates, I started this on April 13th and I finished this on May 6th. It took 3 weeks, I would say. But But yeah, I would say this is pretty quick. It's on big needles. It's a nice pattern. I feel like I've seen a lot of really cool project pages for this pattern, which are dupes of like the Nikki Chasin cardigan, and I really like those. And I would be motivated to make a version of that in the future, but no plans to do that yet. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say for this. One thing I really like is how some of the stripes are like more special mohairs. For example, like down here, I don't know if you can see, this is a Wandering Flock mohair scrap of the Sunsets in Brooklyn mohair that I had from a project. And then this red mohair is from my second ever sweater that I made, so I really like that. I think that's sentimental. And then other ones are from like more recent projects, but I think those have like kind of like cute story to them. But what's fun about this is I did get to incorporate like a lot of mohairs that I bought like earlier on in my knitting career in 2022 that I kind of just like bought without a plan. Like some of those are like the green mohair, and probably even the blue mohair that went with this, and also the dark gray mohair that I used with my edge or ribbed edges. Yeah, so I like that part of it. But all in all, really happy about this project. I just finished sewing the buttons onto this and I had to throw it on because I really like it, and I'm excited to get to wear it as I'm able to with the spring weather that we're having. Okay, then my next finished object. So I also finished this a little earlier this week, and this is another cardigan number 9. This is a gift that I made for my friend, and I'm gonna give this to her tomorrow, as I said. And I had asked her, I sent her a few of the patterns that I had in my library that I'd want to make, and I asked which she would enjoy the most, and she said she would enjoy the cardigan number 9 the most, and she really liked the toggle button. So I knew I would make that for her, and she requested a white cardigan, and because this is a gift, I wanted to get a superwash yarn. So the yarn I ended up using for this is the Drops Big Merino in the shade 1 Cream. And I think this looks good. I feel like I'm hoping it'll be her vision. This took about 8 days to make. I cast this on April 27th, and I finished this on May 5th. And I knit this off gauge for the pattern. So this pattern is typically knit on a 16 stitch gauge, and I was having trouble finding a superwash yarn that would knit up at a 16 stitch gauge that I wanted to buy. So I decided, well, I did hit gauge with this yarn, but it looked like really like airy and gapey and not good. So I decided that I would knit this at an 18 stitch gauge, which for me was on 5mm needles, which is actually the needle size that this pattern calls for, but for me, I'm like a tighter knitter, so I'm not able to get a 16 stitch gauge on 5mm on most yarns. Yeah, that's kind of a tangent, but yeah, so I knit this at a smaller gauge, and because of that, I knit a bigger size than I would for my friend. So I knit a size M, where I think my friend has like this bust measurements of a size S. But with my calculations of this being on an 18 stitch gauge, I should have gotten a bust circumference of the finished object, which would be a little bigger than the size S. So yeah, that hopefully it'll be a good fit for her. I'm excited to see. As for modifications for this, I knit this pretty much to pattern aside from the difference in gauge. The only real modification, I guess you could say, that I made was for the back, which is like really minor. knit a different short row rate for the back, which I mentioned doing for other cardigan number 9's I've made in the past. I just knit one short row after every 3 stitches as opposed to knitting one short row after every 4 stitches, which is called 4 in the pattern, just to kind of like raise the back neck a little more relative to the front. I don't think that's like required, but I just did that because I've been doing that for my own cardigan number 9, so I thought I might as well do that for this one. And then my friend is tall, so I just did 1 more or 2 more decreases for, I think maybe just 1 for the arm. And then I love how the ribbing looks in this yarn. It looks so neat. Oh my gosh. But I knit my ribbing inside out as I typically do, and I knit it on 4mm needles, where I knit the stockinette portions on 5mm needles. And then for the body ribbing, as I typically do, I use a 1/2mm size smaller for the wrong side. So I think I did 4.5mm for my right side ribbing and 3.5mm needles for my wrong side. Like I just have interchangeable needles, so I just change out one of the needles to do that. And then I guess one small modification I made was for the buttonholes. So how this pattern is written has the buttonholes kind of be off center. So to account for that, I did my yarn over buttonhole on the wrong side, 1 row before it would say 2 in the pattern. And I did a bit of research, and I haven't seen anything about doing a wrong side yarn over buttonhole. So typically for a regular like right side buttonhole, you do like a yarn over and then knit 2 together, I think. And I guess I just kind of like did the reverse of that. So I did purl 2 together and then a yarn over, and then it kind of made the buttonholes look as how I wanted them to, because originally I think I also did a knit 2 together on the wrong side, but the buttonhole ended up being in between 2 purl columns, like in the knit column, instead of being in the knit column. So yeah, I actually ended up ripping back so I could make the yarn over / buttonholes be in between 2 knit columns, because I thought it looked better. Yeah, I don't know if that like really made a difference, but it is a little interesting that the buttonhole's off center, but not a big deal. This took a little over 12 skeins of the Drops Merino Big. I was really worried of running out of yarn, or about running out of yarn, and I actually had 1 skein of this that I had ordered that was like in another bag, which wasn't like in my like project bag / basket that I had for this. So I was like freaking out about how much yarn I would use, and I was like, okay, I need to leave 2 yarn balls for the ribbing and the button bands and neck, and I had like 2 balls of yarn left, and I was worried it was too cropped, but then I ended up finding another ball of yarn that I had ordered. And also the neckband and button band didn't even use a whole skein of yarn. Like I barely cracked into my last skein of yarn, which was I bought 13 skeins of yarn for this. And this yarn is honestly kind of heavy, I guess you could say. It's like 75 meters for 50 grams, and it's plied in an interesting way where like it kind of just like comes apart, like you can kind of see here. I don't know. So this is kind of like a heavier piece. It's a little over 600 grams. I used 602 grams of yarn in total. But yeah, I don't know. I'm happy with this. I feel like I haven't knit a garment fully in superwash yarn for myself. I've knit one that was superwash yarn held with a mohair, but I don't wear that one a lot, unfortunately. So I didn't know how this would behave. I honestly don't think it grew, or it did feel like when I was knitting on this, kind of lotiony, which is something people say about superwash yarn. But I wasn't bothered about using it. Like, it was fine. I think it was a good yarn for a gift knit and for this project, and I hope it holds up, and the recipient, my friend, really likes it. So yeah, that's my cardigan number 9, my second finished object, and I will be following that up with yet another cardigan number 9. Okay, and this one is for me. This one I did talk about a little in my last episode, but I cast this on March 31st, and then I was working on it, and then I had a trip, so I decided to leave this at home so I didn't take a full sweater project with me on my trip. And then I came home, and then I think I cast on this cardigan that I'm wearing. And then I was going on that Brooklyn yarn crawl with my friend Georgia, and I was like, oh, I can finish this to wear for that. So I decided to do that. So I finished this project on April 26th. Yeah, I was staying up really late to finish the neckband of this, which I don't recommend, but I do get really motivated by finishing a knit sometimes, so I did do that. I knit this in Durera Natura Juliette yarn in the color Poivre. It's this kind of brown color, and I used just under 4 skeins of this yarn. I think I wrote 3.9, and I gauge watched for this, and I got gauge then, so I knit it on the same gauge as the pattern. And then I did the short row thing that I talked about in my with my friend's cardigan, and also in my last podcast. And also I made the arms smaller. So I knit the size XL in this, which is my typical size, I would say. But I felt like in my previous versions of the cardigan number 9, the armholes were really oversized. So I think I knit I picked up the arm stitches of this section, which would be the same as the size M, where I knit the size XL. And I also cast on less stitches for the body. So I only cast on, or for the underarm and body here. So I only cast on 2 stitches. But yeah, I think I talked about that in my last video, so don't want to be being too redundant about that. And then the only other modification I made was with the button band. So I did a double knit button band of 12 stitches, which is a good button band number because I use the petite knit no break buttonhole method, and it works best when you have 2 or an even number that's divisible by 2 even numbers, 12. And I just use these buttons that I got from Dusty's Vintage Buttons at Vogue Knitting Live, and I really like them. I do think I sewed my buttons on a little too loosely, so it kind of makes the cardigan pull a little bit. Yeah, that's okay. I can kind of fix that. I can go in and make the shank of the button a little shorter. You can see the button kind of flaps around, which is okay. But yeah, besides those the sleeve, the short rows, and the button band, I didn't modify anything. I knit the amount of arm decreases that are stated for my size, although in wearing this I feel I could have done one more arm decrease so the arm would have been a little longer. I feel the arms are looking a little short. Maybe my row gauge is off, but I'm not the biggest row gauge measurer, which maybe isn't good. And I did 15 rows of ribbing for the arm and body. And then as with my prior projects, I used the tubular bind off method. I'm happy with this. I feel like when I wore this for the first time, I was saying that I noticed a lot of pilling in this garment, which I feel like it does look kind of pilly, but honestly, I feel like I was being a little dramatic. Like, pilling is pretty standard with something knit at a loose gauge, and this yarn, the Gilliatt, is a worsted weight yarn that I knit at kind of like an Aran weight gauge, so some pilling is to be expected, but it's not like big pills that I'm like picking off. It just kind of looks like fuzzier, which I don't know. It is what it is. But all in all, I'm happy with this. I've had this yarn in my stash for 2 years. I got it in January of 2023, so I was happy to use it for something, and and I think what I got out of it is a great wearable object. So, yay. Then we'll get into my whips. Okay, this is my first whip that I'll talk about, and this is another gift knit. So I'm also gonna be seeing a friend of mine that I haven't seen for like 6 years, and of course, I decided I should knit my friend a sweater because that's what I do for people, I guess, and myself. And I also originally wanted to make her a cardigan because it's kind of like my thing almost. I don't know. But I'm in kind of a time crunch as I am, or as it kind of ends up for me. So I decided to knit a sweater for her because it's a little faster. You don't need to worry about like sewing the buttons on, blah, blah, blah. And the pattern I ended up choosing for this yarn, I knew I was going to use this yarn because I got this for a gift knit, is the Chunky Lyon sweater by Petite Knit. And this sweater is typically also knit at a 16 stitch gauge, kind of like the cardigan number 9. And this yarn I think looks best at a 15 stitch gauge. So I took that, or sorry, an 18 stitch gauge. So I took that into account, and I'm knitting the size 2XL to get a size L, which I think will be a good size for my friend. Of course, it's kind of like more of a guess based off of, yeah, like me kind of like assuming what size my friend would wear. I haven't seen her in a while. And I'm kind of knitting this as more of a surprise, although I will see her tomorrow, and this this sweater isn't done, so it's not really going to be a surprise at that point. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this pattern. I think this is really such an enjoyable pattern to work up. It's a European shoulder construction, so you start here at the back and you knit increases on every row to kind of shape this back trapezoid, I guess you could say. Then you break the yarn when you're done with these increases, and then knit a flat section here for the side of the neck, and then you do some neck increases, and then do the same on the other side, and then pick up stitches along the this portion here that was just knit, and then join it in one piece and then in the round. And I think this really like flew by, and it's fun to work up. It's the same construction as like the Maggie cardigan, the Poppy Tee, also the Eva cardigan, although this is a round neck, not a V-neck. But yeah, I really like this. I'd recommend. It kind of has like the, I don't know, like appeal of a raglan, but also a better fit. For me, I'm not like loving the fit of a raglan a ton at this point, so this kind of like has the same knitting experience almost, but with a slightly different fit. Besides the gauge, I'm not really modifying anything, but I did modify one thing. So in Petite Knit's pattern, she calls for you to do like knit 4 and then the increase on each side. But I changed that to do knit 3 and then the increase, because here you do a 2-stitch raglan, so then it kind of just like matches more instead of having like a 3-stitch line here and then a 2-stitch line here. Yeah, that's kind of nitpicky, but for me, thought it was worth changing, and it's honestly like a really easy change. And then the other thing I'm modifying is the neck. So this pattern only has the option to do a turtleneck, so I kind of feel like the regular Lyon sweater would be a better pattern purchase if you're comfortable doing like gauge math, because it has the folded neckband instruction and also a turtleneck. So I'm gonna do a double folded neckband in 1x1 rib, and I'll just use instructions for that from like another one of my patterns, probably the neckband of the Ingrid slipover or even the Monday sweater. I have both of those. So, and they both have like the double knit edge or line where you fold the neck over. So might do that. But yeah, besides that, really happy with this. I'm knitting on the neckband now, and once I do that, I'll probably move to the sleeve, I think. And then the body. But I feel like this has been knitting up so fast. I honestly, yeah, it really flew off the needles, and it's been really enjoyable to knit. So, yeah, no complaints there. And I'd really recommend this pattern, and I feel like it can be easily modified into a cardigan, or the pattern originally is like a stripey version. But yeah, I'm choosing to do this. And I already have plans to knit more like modified chunky Lyons. Like for example, I want to knit a size L for me that kind of replicates the cumulus blouse. So using like 2 strands of mohair. And then I'll do like an I-cord neck and stuff. But not for a little while. But for now, doing this one. But that's my chunky Lyon. And then, oh yeah, I didn't talk about the yarn. Quickly, I'll touch on the yarn. I'm just using this yarn I got online from Norway, and this is a Untold yarn Supreme Wool. And it's just an 100% wool yarn, so I don't think this is like a particularly soft yarn, but it's also non-superwash. And although this is also a gift, my friend lives in Europe, so there I know people wash wool in their washing machine, so hopefully she'll be able to do that. But I'll warn her to not wash it on a non-wool cycle, or just to hand wash it only to avoid felting. And then my other whip that I have is something that I haven't worked on in a little bit, and it is my modified petite knit cloud tee that I'm making into a tank top. So I think last time I was still on the back piece here, but now I've done the neck and neck increases, and I've joined for the front piece. So what I have to do is knit a little more of this like flat portion, and then I'll do some increases as I did for the back piece, and then I'll be able to join in the round. But yeah, this is a longer term whip for me. I don't work on it a ton normally, like in my commutes to work, but I like it. I'm using knitting for olive silk in the color Putty, I think it is. And I'm using these 3mm needles. Okay, and then that's my last whip. And then future plans. So, oh, I think I forgot my yarn for one of my future plans. But once I cast off the chunky Lyon cardigan, I'm going to cast on for a sabai top. And I'm gonna use this yarn that I've had for years, like since 2022, which is a Rowan Creative Linen. Honestly, I don't think it's like the best yarn ever, but I've had it for a while and I don't have like any other idea of what to do with it, so I think that'll be good. And I am going to knit the like all stockinette version, and I'm also gonna modify the pattern to have short rows. So the pattern doesn't have short rows, but how I'm gonna modify it is I'll cast on in the round, and then I'll like knit in the, like you do increases like for the first few rows on both sides, or first few rounds, like on at 2 points, and you do an increase every round. So I'll do my increase and knit like a few stitches past that and do a short row to turn it around, and on my like purl side I'll do increases again, and then I'll like go to the other side and do that. So I'll like work back and forth that way. That'll be good. I feel like if I like how that pattern works up, I'll definitely knit more Sabai tops because it's a really cute pattern. And then after that, I'm planning to knit a pair of DK weight socks for my grandma. So I have these 2 skeins of yarn that I feel like kind of go together. I held them together to make a hat for my mom. I honestly think these are like a little thin for like to be held together for a hat, at least the Manhattan hat that I made, which calls for like a light worsted yarn, and these together are, I guess, like a DK weight, but I don't know. It was a pretty light hat, like a thin hat. But I have these like sitting in my stash, so I was thinking about what I could do with them, because my grandma said that she enjoys knitted socks and thicker knitted socks. So I decided what I'll do is use both of these yarns in one sock. So I'm gonna use this one, I think, for the heel or the cuff and toe, and maybe even the heel too. And I'll use this for the body of the sock, I guess you could say. And the reason I wanted to do that is because I have about like 60 grams of each of these yarns, and I can't get a pair of socks out of that held double. I should have said these are fingering weight sock yarns, and I'm gonna hold them double. This one I know is for sure the Cascade Heritage sock, and this one is a hand-dyed one, maybe from Hedgehog Fibers, but I got them both from one company, which is a great yarn store. But yeah, excited about that. I've never done DK weight socks, and I'm yet to finish a pair of cuff down socks, so I'm hoping to do that. Okay, that is all the knitting I have to talk about. And then, okay, what I'll talk about next is my favorite, or like some podcasters I've been enjoying. So earlier today, I was watching Steady Knits. I really like her podcast. She was working on the Moby sweater, which looked really good, and she was saying how she is starting residency soon, and she's also moving to New York City, which is like a huge accomplishment, the residency part, and really fun, the moving to New York City part. So yeah, really enjoy her channel. She always makes really cool things with good colors and yarns. And then I was also recently watching APT Atelier. She kind of does like all fiber arts and makes really cool things. Something that I've really been lusting over that she made recently is her pointel t-shirts and tops. I really like a pointel top, and I feel like, kind of as she was saying, they're kind of expensive. So it would be really cool to make one of those. She said you don't need a serger, and I don't have a serger, so that's something that's kind of like loosely on my radar, although I don't really sew very often, so I don't know if I will do that, but really cool. And then I was also recently watching Danish Musings. Love her channel. She makes, honestly, like such amazing things in such beautiful colors. Yesterday I was watching her video, and she made the most amazing looking colorwork sweater with like all of these different yarns in it, and it just looked like insane. She's a very advanced and like technically capable knitter, and she makes really cool things. And the background of her videos is always really, really pretty, like all the nature they have in Denmark. So love that. Okay, yeah. So those are the podcasters I'll talk about today. And then for recipes, Last time I filmed, my phone died, so my like recipe portion was cut out. But what I wanted to mention then is something that I've still been really enjoying making, and it is these peanut butter and milk chocolate chunk cookies, which are amazing and so easy to make. The recipe is from Kitchen Project. Nicola Lamb, she has an amazing Substack and an even more amazing cookbook, Sift, which I have and I love it. And I think there's really amazing recipes in there, and she's just so talented, and love her Substack and everything. But also about those cookies, they're really amazing cookies. What I do is I typically like make the dough, or recently I've been making like double the recipe of the dough because it's a pretty small recipe. And then I scoop them out onto a quarter sheet pan, and then I pop it in the freezer. And then when the cookie dough is frozen, you can like take it out and put it in a bag because it won't get like smushed together, or you can just leave it on the sheet pan in your freezer if you're lazy like me. And I like, whenever I want a cookie, I just kind of defrost them like ever so slightly and then bake them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and they turn out great every time. I'm a huge fan of that recipe. I've been making it for quite a while now, and I'm a big fan, and I think I talk about it a lot too. So yeah. Another thing I just made today was I made banana bread. I made banana bread from this Instagram which is like an amazing Instagram page, really amazing bakes, Alexis Dunlap. She's a baker in Los Angeles, and she doesn't release like a ton of recipes, like, and they're not even formal recipes because they're kind of just like screenshots of her notes app on Instagram. But I just think she makes like really amazing looking cookies, and I really like her recipes. So it's a great recipe if you're looking for a banana bread which is like a little more involved. It's a miso brown butter banana bread. I have made it with the miso, but today I made it without miso because I didn't have any on hand, and I'm still very pleased with the results, and it's really delicious. So I'd recommend that. And then the last thing, just kind of random, that I made recently is a cheese souffle. I got the inspiration, I guess, to make this from Amy France, Young Kombucha 420 on Instagram. If you follow her, she honestly just has like the most amazing taste in food, and she makes like, like really good looking things, and yeah, she has good taste. Like, I feel like that's simply put like how you can describe her. And she recommended this souffle recipe, and I was really eager to try it. And yeah, I tried it and it worked pretty well. I don't have both like individual ramekins and like a big like massive souffle ramekin as a recipe calls for, so I just made it in like another ceramic dish, and it was fine. Not as beautiful as the recipe, but like really good and cheesy. A bop. Or all of those recipes are bops. Would recommend. Okay, that's everything I had to share for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you have still been sticking around, I guess, but I really appreciate it. I will hopefully be back in a few weeks to talk about more finished objects and plans and all of that. But until then, have a good few weeks, a good day, night, whatever, wherever you are, and we'll talk soon. Bye.